very good evening, Stats Race Lens users and visitors. Happy you could join us ahead of the Santa Anita Handicap and Felipe Saturday, of course, at Santa Anita Park. Absolutely thrilled to have with us Ellis Starr from Equibase and from NBC Sports, and in close proximity to the great race place, Laffit Pincay the third. Fellas, good evening.
Good evening.
Happy Big Cap Week, everyone.
You know, of course, Laffit, you've been on hand for any number of big caps, and although this race doesn't necessarily have the cachet that some big caps have, maybe the absence of Arrogate makes it a slightly more competitive event. Some historical perspective on the big cap from your perspective.
It was such a big event growing up. It was so important to my father. I know how proud he is, how proud I am of his 5 big cap wins. You know, growing up, you had the Triple Crown, the Breeders' Cup, and the big cap wasn't far off. And some of the greatest racehorses that have won this particular race. My father, when he was involved with Perot and the disqualification of John Henry the year after he won with John Henry in 1981, his most recent was with Grindton in '86. And a quick story, the first one that comes to mind, having the glass half empty perspective, it was in '92 or '93, and my father was riding a horse for, it might have been Darrell Vienna, I'm not quite sure. His name was Starr Recruit. He was 59-1, and he gets nosed out by Patrick Valenzuela and Sir Beaufort. It was the last of Charlie Whittingham's 11 big cap wins. Point of the story is that my dad had a friend, and he kind of had this thing about him where he was this great handicapper, and he never missed a photo. He never had to watch a replay of a race. That first time he saw the horses cross the wire, he knew the winner. That was his deal. He tells me, and at the time stepmother, go to the winner's circle. Your dad just won the big cap at 59-1. Walking into the winner's circle, and they flash Sir Beaufort's number. The most absolutely humiliating experience, having to make the walk of shame about face and walk back up to the box that Sir Beaufort and Charlie and P-Val beat Starr Recruit by a nose. So many great big cap memories, and even though this may not be one of the best big caps in history, it's always an exciting time of year.
Of course, the 1.25 test at this time of year, a big part of the discussion. And when we look at the race, Ellis Starr, that's a big, really to me, the big point to dive into, which gets into pace. It gets into some of these turf horses who are probably fit to go 1.25 miles, but we're going to have to answer questions about dirt. And there's several of those, including isotherm and much more. But here's Midnight Storm on the rail. And your pace setter, we know exactly where he's going to be early. Give us your overview.
Well, that's absolutely true, Steve. You've got, first of all, 2 kind of cliche rules in these kinds of races that I spout once in a while. One is that Grade 1 winners win Grade 1 races. Second is you need horses that really can run the classic distance, whether it's turf or dirt. And Midnight Storm, we'll talk about him. Of course, when you look at his races here, I talked about this the last time we did the seminar regarding one of the races we talked about on Mrs. Starr Day. With me personally, one of the first things I do on a handicap any race is I look for horses when they won, and I go backwards. As you can see, I'm doing here from right to left. And if I see all ones, I call it a picket fence. I think Dick Mitchell may have taught me that many years ago. And if all the horses win that way, they're going to want the lead, and you look for other horses that might want the lead as well. In this case, you're not going to find any. And that's the one thing about Midnight Storm. He has an early pace advantage similar to what he had here in the Native Diver and in the San Pasquale. And those are his 2 dirt races after moving off the grass. And just to confirm that, of course, we can always go to true odds. For the most part, it paints a good picture of the pace scenario. And he's got the rails, so it's pretty easy to assume that Rafael Bejarano is going to use that to his advantage. And in the pace analysis, you can see he's in front. It looks like hard aces and the 9 Imperative will be stalking him. It's funny, and this happens sometimes. It's because this is Stats' little black box. They have the 9 and the 5 in front of the second call, but I got to say that's probably not realistic. I think Midnight Storm's in front. But when it comes down to the final, you can see he stands out here with a 35% win percentage and his adjusted true odds are 9-5. Certainly, 8-5 morning line is less than that, but he does have that advantage, certainly. And anytime you want to check, you can sort, of course, on the true odds, showing the adjusted true odds. You can show it as a percentage, which will match what it showed in the projected pace scenario. Talking about back to Midnight Storm, so, we know that he's won 2 in a row on the dirt, so that's not a problem. His only try at 1.25 miles, and I've got my PP set up to my Equibase lifetime PP, so I can go back and find his other dirt races. He's had 5 in his career, and way back when he was much younger and different, as you can see, he started his career on the dirt. He ran second in a sprint, and then another sprint he ran second, and then fourth, and he won at 7 furlongs. And then all the other races since then, except for the Pacific Classic, and he ran badly here in 2015 behind Beholder. But again, he's a different horse then, because all of his recent efforts, just judging by his Equibase speed figures, have been pretty consistent. 117, 111, 118, 125, 124, 116, and the last race was a 4-horse field, so he could have actually gone a little faster. So I discount his previous dirt races, his current form. He's done. It's also interesting here is there's an angle. We talk about angles. As we know, Laffit put together 10 angles. I've added 10 angles. There was a bunch of pre-populated angles. Of course, users know they should be able to create their own angles or modify them. But there's an angle here that came up, and I can't remember whose this was, but whenever you see an angle in green, that depending on how you've highlighted it, I set my highlight thresholds, anything that has an ROI greater than about 5%, because I want to see anything that's beaten the takeout. And this is a grade 1 route. This is something that's intuitive, but it's counterintuitive. It would be profitable. And I'll show you what this angle is. This is an angle where today's race, a grade 1 stake, the horse's last start finished no worse than second, and it was a route. And today's race is a grade 1 stake, a dirt route. And believe it or not, if you just bet any horse all across the country for the last year that fit that criteria, you'd have a 5% flat net profit. I think that's pretty cool. To be honest, I don't know, Steve and Laffit, you're surprised by that that's actually profitable?
Just going through, let me read it. I'm reading through it again. No worse than second, grade 1, route.
Right. Yep. Last race no worse than second in a route, and today's race is a grade 1 dirt route. That's all it is. It's that simple. And it shows that at the high levels, horses hold their form, which I think we all know as handicappers intuitively. But lest we think it would be a negative ROI, it's not. So that's the angle on Midnight Storm. So even at 8-5, he's playable. And did you want to add anything, Laffit, on any of that?
With Midnight Storm, no. There's a reason he's 8-5. Proven on both surfaces. At the grade 1 level, no. He is strictly the one to beat. If it feels like you're reaching for a price in this race, I think it's because you are. Whether it's Midnight Storm and Shaman Ghost, aside from that, you do have to reach a little bit. But I do think he's trustworthy and the deserving favorite for a reason.
Well, we'll move to Shaman Ghost since you mentioned him. And this is a case, in my opinion, where you're looking for a representative race and trying to assume if a horse ran the race that's his best race here, how he'd compete. And pretty good. The one thing that's notable, of course, is Javier Castellano taking off an entire day's mounts in Florida to ride him. The horse's biggest win came with Javier right here in the Woodward Stakes, in which he rode him from just off the pace. It was his highest career Equibase speed figure, which you can see is highlighted in my default highlights. He certainly wasn't disgraced last time out. I think we all agree running second to perhaps the best horse in training in Arrogate. And in that race, he ran pretty well. But I wanted to look at it again because, of course, I was watching Arrogate and Crow to see what's happened. But I'm going to put on this video here because the comment says 2-3, lugged in and finished well. And my takeaway, which we'll see here in a second on this video, which I'm going to make full screen. I'm going to skip off, by the way, to about the midway point here. And as you can see, Shaman Ghost is back here in the Stronach colors in the black. And it's a big gap. And, of course, at this point, we got those horses battling with Arrogate sitting there. I could have advanced it a little more, but the point I want to make, and I don't know if you guys will agree, certainly for all our fans watching this as well, is that even though he couldn't do anything with Arrogate in the last day, he keeps coming. And I really like that about this horse. Watching this, did you guys notice that at all?
Ellis, yeah, I think his punch is going to be that much stronger going at the 1.25 mile distance. He's proven at the 1.5 mile distance. He belongs at this level. And you look at the company he's been keeping, whether it's beating Frosted in the Woodward, whether it's running third behind Gunrunner at Churchill in the Clark over a speed favoring track. He made that long extended run, much like you're looking at here, that led up to the big performance in the Pegasus World Cup. Nobody was going to beat Arrogate on that particular afternoon. But Shaman Ghost, I don't know that he necessarily gets the credit that he deserves. Now not having to face the likes of Arrogate in the big cap, he's a major player, Ellis. And I think that there used to be a little bit of a stigma against horses coming in from the East trying to win the big cap. Many good horses tried and failed. The late St. Liam is one that comes to mind. We went for years saying that, well, Broad Brush was the last horse to invade from the East to win a big cap. It's not necessarily the case anymore. We saw Einstein win on a synthetic track. We saw Ron the Greek a few years back. You know, Jimmy Jerkins had the issue with FNX, who would find new and creative ways to lose all the time, whether it was breaking out in hives before a big cap. There was another situation with FNX where a biker gang, that this was a story Gary Stevens told Jerry Bailey, this is right before the Foster, that like 15 Harleys revved their engines like 3-4 minutes to post time, and FNX completely came unglued. Point is, it's good to see Jimmy Jerkins back here in the big cap with Shaman Ghost, and whatever hesitation there may have been in the past about East Coast horses in this particular race, I think recent history has proven if the horse is good enough, he can ship out here and win.
So yeah, you said earlier. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I would fold in that the FNX experience from a year ago is really important. Jimmy Jerkins wasn't necessarily keen on starting FNX's season in the big cap. Dr. Cohen wanted to do that, but they came out there and the horse was brave as can be under the circumstances with what Jimmy characterized as the worst case of hides he's seen in his whole life. I mean, and Jimmy's been around enough horses that have had hides episodes. But I think it's important that Jimmy knew exactly what the whole experience. I mean, the Jerkins family historically are not big on shipping. But Jimmy, when he talked to me a couple of weeks ago, when they were waiting to see what Arrogate was going to do, he made it very clear that he was training Shaman Ghost with this race in mind, should Arrogate go to Dubai. And the fact that he's drilled 3 times since Pegasus, and the fact that you've got Castellano, who I think will ride differently than Jose Ortiz. I think the key to this race is watching Shaman Ghost and the proximity that he will keep to Midnight Storm. And there's a real case to be made. This is a 1.25 miles. And there's a real case to be made here that this is beyond Midnight Storm's scope. And he better have an answer for Shaman Ghost, because Castellano will move when he thinks it's opportune. And to me, Shaman Ghost is the horse to beat here, and especially since he's not favored.
Yeah, let me also point out, we're talking about the classic distance. So looking back here, of course, since I have a lifetime TPs pulled up, Shaman Ghost has won at the classic distance. It was on the all-weather track, the poly track at Woodbine, when he won the Queen's Plate, and then he came right back and lost by a neck in the Prince of Wales. Both restricted races, but still he's proven the distance, where Midnight Storm, as Steve rightfully said, his only 1.25 miles was in the Pacific Classic. I maintain he's a different horse, but interesting. We have Laffit and I don't know if Steve might have, Steve and I each have 2 horses to help make money here, because these are the 2 favorites, of course. Midnight Storm opening at 8-5, Shaman Ghost at 2-1. So my particular horse I'm throwing in the mix here is Isotherm. And my take on Isotherm is he is comparable to Midnight Storm 3 races back. Because when Midnight Storm, again, had been running on turf for most of his career, and his 2 previous dirt races, most were sprints, his dirt route wasn't good, and all of a sudden, he ran very well. Isotherm has the same kind of pattern. Here's a horse that's been running almost exclusively on the turf. His dirt races came way back at the beginning of his career. His first was the Saratoga Sprinting, and then he ran the Breeders' Cup Juvenile in October of 2015 and ran, I think, last, 13th. But his last 2 races, particularly this last one, a grade 2, mile and a quarter on the grass, his speed figures don't stack up as well, but he's also, and I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, he's a newly turned 4-year-old. And I think newly turned 4-year-olds have upside. So I'm looking at him because of it, because that mile and a quarter, and because he's 4. Now, I know Laffit has a horse he wants to talk about, and that is 2020 Vision.
Yeah, Guy, we look at this race on paper, feels like a 2-horse race, Midnight Storm, Shaman Ghost. We said the same thing going into the Pegasus World Cup with California Chrome and Arrogate, and Shaman Ghost sneaks in there at a big price to run second. So I think a long shot with some upside here. I believe he's 12-1 on the morning line. Is a 2020 Vision. And I like the idea that he's graded stakes place in his last 2 races on the main track. Now, granted, they were both off the turf races, but still, the performances that we saw from him in the American and the San Gabriel, at least it's an indication that he can't handle a surface other than grass. He's graded stakes place at the mile and a quarter distance in the John Henry. And all that aside, it's the human element that's intact with 2020 Vision. If at the end of the day, we're talking about a $26, $30 winner in the big cap, and there's Richard Mandella celebrating his 4th big cap win, and Mike Smith standing there, having won 4 out of the last 5 big caps, shared belief, game on dude, game on dude. You know, you'd kick yourself. When Richard Mandella was asked about it, he says, hey, look, it's the big cap. In the big money races, you have to look at these individuals and the guys that have been here before. The best big money rider in the country in Mike Smith, Richard Mandella, who's been doing it for so many other years, not to mention the pedigree angle here. Pollard's Vision. You remember he was an Illinois Derby winner. He did most of his damage, some of his best work on dirt, and the switch from grass to dirt has been extremely productive with Pollard's Vision as a sire. I believe the win percentage is somewhere in the 22 percentile and an ROI of better than 82%. So that's certainly something to keep an eye on.
Let me interrupt you here, Laffit, and we talked about this. So I set up, and again, if there's something you want to, any handicapper out there, if there's something that Laffit mentioned to me, he wanted to know when we discussed how to do this easy about Pollard's Vision going from turf to dirt. So I actually set up easily. This is the default past 5 years dirt graded stakes, but that's not what I want to see. I have a template here that says sire, turf to dirt, and this is going to be for Pollard's Vision, and this is going to be the last 5 years turf to dirt routes. And you can see 13% winners and 82% ROI. If you want to see who the major horses were, you can see this. There's one that paid $74, so it did kind of skew it a little bit. But I think that's pretty good. That's an indication, as you said, Laffit, that Pollard's Vision's foals to make a transition. Another thing I want to point out real quick is Pollard's Vision also has one on dirt going along. I'm not Pollard's Vision. 2020 Vision has one on dirt going along at Santa Anita. When I go to lifetime GPs, which are so invaluable here, and I go down to Pollard's Vision's first few races, you can see his second lifetime start was a mile on the dirt at Santa Anita on January 15th, and he stopped the pace, drew off, and the second horse, you can see by italics, came back to win. So he does have a dirt route win in his pedigree, and he certainly is bred to get the distance. The John Henry Turf Cup, as you may have mentioned, was a mile and a quarter. Another thing you want to know, how about Dick Mandella? So I know we discussed this, Laffit, I'll let you talk about it, but I'm going to do the same thing here. It's going to be Dick Mandella with Mike Smith in graded stakes, because he uses Pratt and some of the other guys. So go ahead and talk about that while I'm finding
that combination alone, specifically in graded stakes races, and with the 3 previous big cap wins for Richard Mandella going back, it's been a little while, but just the same. With Mike Smith and his 3 recent wins in the big cap, the fact that they're teaming up here Like I said, if they're in the winner's circle with an upset in the form of 2020 Vision, you'd feel a little bit silly, at least not using them. And as you pointed out, Ellis, this isn't totally foreign for 2020 Vision. The win going long at Santa Anita, the class, the fact that he is graded stakes place on the main track and at the distance. So the horse who does have the upside and an outside look and that human element that is awfully strong, especially when they team up and combine with Richard Mandella and Mike Smith.
For some reason, I have to admit, this isn't working I had earlier because I had a better thing than this. Past 2 years, dirt, routes, graded stakes with jockey, and then we were going to compare them. But I remember getting something different, so I'll have to apologize on that one. But then, of course, we do have one more thing, which is really important. We all know. I kind of call Mike Smith my Craig Perrett played the last few years because if you guys recall the last few years, the great jockey Craig Perrett rode. He rode very sparingly, and he won a boatload of stakes. And one thing I find very interesting about Mike Smith here is his Grade 1 dirt routes. And this is past year dirt routes. If I switch this, I'll just modify it. And again, you can do this. Anybody can do this. So much information here. But I'm going to switch to just Grade 1s. And one of my friends calls Mike Smith the Cadillac driver. I think he should be the spokesman for Cadillac, like Matthew McConaughey is for Lincoln, because when this guy gets on a Grade 1 horse, it's pretty phenomenal. And I thought it was good. I didn't know it was this good when I saw it. So in the last year, Grade 1 dirt routes, he's 9 for 25 with a 45% positive ROI.
Look at that.
You can see, and this is split pretty good. I mean, there's some nice horses in here. A second place finish, and then of course Songbird, Arrogate, Tamarcuz, and Mastery. We'll talk about in a while. But I mean, even on small numbers, it's pretty good. So I agree with Laffit. I mean, I'm going to use my long shot isotherm and his long shot 2020 Vision in exactas and trifectas, maybe hoping to split the two favorites. If not, at least some pretty inexpensive trifectas in the Santa Anita Handicap.
But that's the beauty, Ellis, of this particular database, of this particular product. You say to yourself, well, yeah, it seems like Mike Smith always wins these races, and Mike Smith is always right there and riding the big horses and when the Grade 1 races and the big money races. This you can actually go and back test, plug in the formula, and see if what you seem to believe in terms of, yeah, it's always Mike Smith doing X, Y, or Z. You can actually test it here and statistically prove where it's accurate or inaccurate.
I'm going to throw in one horse for people to include because he's a mystery, and that's High Happy, the Argentinian. And he's going to get Lasix for the first time here. He missed all of 2017. You know, for those that see races from different parts of the world and you don't know what they are, horses that win the Carlos Pellegrini at San Isidro, and the fact that High Happy won the Nacional on the dirt, and if you want to go to YouTube and watch him win it, it is stunning. This is a real horse, and I am not leaving him off because he looks tactical. He has virtually, I mean, since coming to the U.S., it seems like he's working his way into shape. His race in the San Marcos was deceptively good. And I think this horse is a dangerous commodity as an unknown. Take it for what it's worth. Did we lose? Did I lose you guys?
We lose Ellis. I can hear you, Steve.
Oh, I'm here. Sorry. So I'm moving to
All right.
China Doll.
I thought we lost connection.
No, Laffit and I had discussed the China Doll because it's a great race to end the day. Because especially if you're betting one or both of the favorites in the big cap, you want to get some value in the doubles. And one of the first things I noticed in this race, a mile on the grass, it's a non-graded stakes, is there is a ton of pace in this race. And one way to easily determine that is to go to the True Odds and click on the running style. And you see 3 horses here, all with a defined early running style. Bernina Starr, Surcat Sally, and the Sunset, and then maybe a couple pressers. And one of the things I do next, and we'll talk about this, now that I've seen that, I'm going to go back and validate that. And those are number 3, 5, and 11. So really quick, I want to say, okay, do I agree with that scenario? And in this particular case, when you look at Bernina Starr, you will see last time out of the mile on the dirt, 90 early pace figure, then 84, 89. The fraction was 46 and 4. I have mine set on pace figures, and she wired the field. Well, my feeling is that works. They're going to try those tactics again. The problem in this case is you've also got, as I said, the 5 here, which is Surcat Sally, and all 3 wins. The last one, she was the head back for the most part. She's in front from the half mile to the end. And then the other horse is the Sunset, number 11. And all 3 of her good races have all been on the lead. And she's stretching out. So you know she's going to go fast. So in that case, at least my take on the race was they should all let the lead. And I think they're going to go way too fast. So I went looking for some closers. And 3 horses I'll talk about, and I know Laffit's got one, Steve may have one, are Beau Recall, the Recall, who is number 10, Siberian Iris, who's also eligible, who I hope gets in, or Dick Mandela, who we just spent a lot of time talking about the last race, and Miss Sugars. So Beau Recall, number 9 here, who opens up at 5-1, decent play. This is kind of like High Happy. Steve was talking about, I believe, Steve, same kind of thing, right? This is a horse running in England, ran very good, horrible in her U.S. debut, and last time deceptively good. This was against Miss Sunset, who went wire to wire in that downhill sprint. Now she's stretching out. She hasn't. Her route was bad there, but it could be a lot better. Dick Balt is one of the hottest trainers there is. But that January, I'm on the wrong horse. I'm sorry. I meant to be on the 10. Apologize. Beau Recall.
If anybody deserves a stakes win, I was just going to say, if anybody deserves a stakes win this weekend, it's Simon Callahan, guys.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So first time, and so she was entered in a race here, and I put my scratches in line with my PT so I could see this kind of stuff, so I could see she was entered in January, but she was scratched because it was off turf, and came right back, and she wanted a mile. So she basically wanted a mile after being off from August to January with a nice kick, a 98 figure, which I'll show you in a minute is competitive with the stakes horses in this field. And Joe Talbot is going to ride her back. And I love the finish here from 6th to 4th, the drawing away. So I think she's on the upside. Siberian Iris, who I said, of course, isn't also eligible, who I really hope gets in. Veteran Alex Solis, the old guy, not the young one. I believe it's the dad. Rode her very well. First time out, sprint on the turf, down the hill, 4th, and then off turf scratch, and then a nice win rallying from 9th to draw off. Mandela takes the time, so if this horse came to hand second time out, I think she's got some talent. And again, that 99 figure is very good. And to put that in perspective, when I get to the 1 here, we'll see why, because the Sugars won a race just like this called the Blue Northern, and she won it at Santa Anita at the mile. She closed from just off the pace. She got 94 and then 99. So those other 2 horses with those Echo-based speed figures are very similar to what you have in this particular race as well. So those are the 3 I'm looking at here. And I know, Laffit, you want to talk about a horse you'd like. Go on.
Yeah, that part of the key is what you just mentioned with Miss Sugars is the inside post, and you have all the respect in the world for the favorite Surcat Sally at 5-2. At the end of a long day, 11th race, this is the epitome of a get-out race. It's wide open, this China doll. So I'm looking for some value as well. You know, there's an old racing axiom that we used to always focus on. I remember when I was a kid, it was taking the jockey who won the stakes race, playing him back in the nightcap. If you're a believer in Shaman Ghost and Javier Castellano, look out for Castellano on Go On Mary. Number 2, 10-1 on the morning line, guys, with these bigger fields. For me, it's about Race shape, trip, and who's going to save ground. Ellis, you pointed out all the speed in the race. Go On Mary, who I do like her closing kick and that inside post position, specifically at Santa Anita. A mile or longer saving ground is key. I also like to switch going from the hillside turf course to a mile or farther at Santa Anita. I think that works in Go On Mary's favor. The farther, the better. So the combination of the post, stretch out in distance, her closing style with all the pace, and Javier Castellano, first time in the saddle. Lots to like about Go On Mary. I think she outruns that 10-1 morning line billing, guys.
And something you pointed out to me was, we're talking about some statistics here. So we wanted to look at first turf route for
broken bow, right?
Daughters of Broken Bow. So again, I have the default is here, but I have a one I set up here, which is sire first turf route, and I was happily surprised when you pointed this out to me, Laffit, because it was pretty good. So the last 5 years, when progeny of Broken Bow on turf go long for the first time, pretty darn good, a 67% return on investment. And again, I like sorting on the winners here. Some of these horses have been totally ignored. You can see 14-1, 34-1, 26-1, 13-1, and 33-1. Going right over to 10-1.
Some of the hidden pedigree angles that you can find on Race Lens. We discussed it in the big cap with Pollard's Vision, dirt to turf, and you see it the same scenario here, and that big ROI, the big return on investment with this particular move with Broken Bow, first time going long on grass.
Steve, is that a surprise to you that all those horses got away at those prices? For a sire, we know it's pretty good, but people don't think that they're that good in turf route.
Well, and this this is exactly the kind of information you can unearth, and there's plenty. I think back to when Lawrence Stitch used to talk about the sires, the hidden turf sires, and in fact was looking earlier. Going back to our first discussion in the big cap and More Than Ready, when More Than Ready first entered stud, and I can remember Lauren saying this is a horse that's going to be a hidden turf sire, and Scat Daddy was another one, and so there's plenty of stallions that are thought of as as getting dirt runners, but when you dig in, the ones that get a chance on grass, you may get those kinds of surprising stats. And that's why when you do the work and you get in there and pan for gold, you find things like this. That's exactly what this tool and what Race Lens can do. And lens is the key word, because you're going to focus in and you're going to find things beneath the surface. That's
what surprised me with the Broken Bow angle is that I like the angle going in terms of a sire of horses going long on grass. I didn't know it was that effective, that productive, especially with uncovering some of those long shots and bigger prices.
And a point I want to make is, we talk about this a lot for people playing handicapping contests. Certainly, if I was playing a handicapping contest tomorrow, I would save a bullet, an entry for this horse, because with that statistic, even though it's a low win percentage, if I can get a $22 winner, especially late in the day, that's going to leapfrog me in a contest. So that's one of the things that Race Lens has that no other program that I've found has in terms of sire and dam stats, is you could do these deep dives and find this that might be applicable, especially since this statistic fits Go On Mary's scenario to a T, because it is exactly that. This horse is going on turf, first time routing. So very, very important in the scheme of things. So now we're going to skip down and talk about the first of the two 3-year-old stakes on the card. We're going to go down to San Felipe. Some people think it's uninteresting, of course, it's out of the pick 6 sequence because of the fact that we do have the two heavy favorites, but we do owe it to everybody to talk about it a little bit. I think for the most part, we're on the same horses. I think I made the race Iliad, Gormley, and Mastery. Laffit, I know, likes Mastery. Iliad, he's going to take a stand against Gormley. I'm dying to hear what he has to say about it. But I'll start by talking about Iliad a little bit, because this is another one going long. And that's the only real question mark about Iliad is, as you can see, his races so far have all been sprints. But his race Last race, the 2-year-old got a 109 Echo Speed figure, came right back with a 108 off the layoff, so he's on his way up. Flavie and Pratt riding for O'Neill. I think he ran very well and can improve. I just think that he has great tactical speed. I'm sure, we're going to see 3 or 4 horses kind of vying for the lead. There's a lot of horses that can run up close here, so we know they have a shot. I don't need to talk Gormley out much. He got one of the best Echo Bay speed figures for any horse in the country, 3-year-old so far, 116 here when he won by a head in the 1 mile in the slot, but he also won on fast when he won the front runner last fall. And then Mastery, of course, is undefeated in 3 races. They're going to be the heavy favorites. Mastery opens at 6-5. It's not in Raceland yet because it hasn't gone final. Gormley 9-5 and Iliad 5-2. There's an interesting angle here, though, with Mastery. And again, this is kind of counterintuitive, and I didn't believe it when I saw it. You see the screen, so I've got that threshold set, as I said, to show me an angle that's profitable. And I call it Baffert back-to-back graded. That's kind of a misnomer, but you'll see this in a minute, guys and gals. When Bob Baffert has a horse that won its last race, and its next race is a graded stakes. That's all it is, very simple. Baffert with a horse that won its last race, and today's race is a graded stakes, printer out, doesn't matter, only comes up 50 times in a year. But there's a 50% profit there. I don't know how he does it, because we all know these horses pay $3, but, he does it.
That's really surprising. That's really surprising.
Isn't that crazy?
That's bizarre.
So you cannot, 6-5, you can't get Mastery to win, but I think it'd be foolish to leave them off ticket. So Laffit, I'll let you talk about Mastery. I know there was a statistic I looked up for you, which is Baffert, another Baffert stat, which is Baffert off a layoff in a graded stakes. And you can talk about Mastery, why you like him as well while finding the statistic.
Yeah, with this race, to me, by the way, it's not part of the pick 6, I don't believe. I think it's the 5th race on the program. To me, Mastery would be the slam dunk single on the afternoon without question. It's not as much as the love affair I have with Mastery. It's because of the stands I'm going to take against Iliad and Gormley, and we'll get to them. But for Mastery, here's a horse whose stock has only skyrocketed while he sat on the sidelines and watched the Classic Empires and McCracken's deal with injuries, and watched the Motowns disappoint, and LRE disappoint, and Irish Warcry disappoint, with just by training really well, and the fact that he's a Bob Baffert trainee and he looks like the best of the Bob Baffert 3-year-olds at the stage. He hasn't run this year, and everyone seemingly has him as a consensus top 2 or 3 Derby/Triple Crown type racehorse. He does have the 2 knocks against him of who has he actually beat, nobody of note, and really easy trips. All the same, the way he's been training, and when you throw in some of the statistics to back it up, Bob Baffert, with the layoff horse, as patient as he is with some of his better 3-year-olds, i.e. Arrowgate, but as patient as he can be with some of his comebacking horses off the layoff into a graded stakes race. He's won the Breeders' Cup Classic the last 2 years. I know it was special horses, but still winning the Breeders' Cup Classic twice with horses who hadn't run since the Travers. That takes some training. Now, he always gives all the credit to the horses. I think Baffert deserves some credit as well. Winning the Pegasus World Cup with Arrowgate off of a 2-month break. He's exceptionally gifted when it comes to getting horses ready for particular races without the necessary prep race, and I think we're going to see that with Mastery in the San Felipe.
And the one that impressed me the most, who I've always considered, please don't yell at me, underachiever, is Opportunity, and he got Opportunity to win that race off a layoff last time too. So you can see I ordered them by 1. You can see Opportunity, Arrowgate, American Pharaoh, Sky Kingdom. So not a lot, but 6 for 10, and again, a profit with an average payoff of 460 and 6 for 10, a 50% profit. So he's one of those guys, kind of like Chad Brown in the East, that can get a horse off a layoff to go 2 turns pretty well. You have to play the hand you're dealt. You have to take what they'll give you, and if you want to go ahead and try to beat Baffert in these particular scenarios, in the end, you're going to wind up reaching and paying for it. One of the other things we discussed was Iliad. I already went over, but I want to go back on this other angle that we had talked about a little bit, you put on your notes, which is Ghost Zapper, because here you have a horse you're trying to figure out if he can go 2 turns for the first time. And Ghost Zapper, we know sires, horses that can run long, like Shaman goes. But
this Ellis, while you find Ellis, this was the exact angle on Race Lens that we produced the numbers for me personally. Why I wound up on Shaman Ghost to use him with Arrowgate in the Pegasus World Cup was the presence of Ghost Zapper as a stallion in a graded stakes race going long. The numbers are off the charts, and if you follow that path with Shaman Ghost, it paid dividends in the Pegasus World Cup, and I'm expecting to see it. This is why I give Iliad a shot to compete with Mastery, and why, again, Mastery would be my single, but this is one reason for Iliad fans who are thinking that Iliad can upset Mastery. That presence of Ghost Zapper going long in a graded stakes race, statistically, it's productive.
Yeah, and there's not that many horses here, but again, 3 for 8. Nothing big in terms of payoffs, but you can see good horses, by the way. Here it goes. Go Maggie Go, all stakes winners and contested. And those were all great stakes, first routes on dirt, and all winners. And on different, and one of them, of course, was on Santa Anita. Here the Ghost was back in 2013, but that was at Santa Anita. And if you ever want to see what that race was, by the way, people, you can just click on, in case we went over this before, click on the horse, and it will come up here. Find it. This was the San Felipe. It was this race, the San Felipe Stakes, back in 2013. I totally forgotten. So this was a ghost Zapper going from 6 furlongs to mile and 16th. Won this race in 2013. How's that for karma?
And he was a legit 3-year-old contender that he got injured, and I believe missed the Santa Anita Derby. He missed the Kentucky Derby, and he never regained his form. But if you're bored and you have a couple of minutes on your hands, watch here the Ghost San Felipe that year. He was awesome.
I remember he was top of my list for about 2 minutes. Now, forgive me, look, you were going to talk a little bit about Gormley and regressing. Did I miss that? Did you cover that already?
No, we haven't discussed it, so we know that Bob Baffert dominates the Rebel. That's something we could discuss next week with American Anthem. He's won 6 out of the last 7 Rebel Stakes, but I'll be taking a stand against American Anthem next week like I am with Gormley this week. For American Anthem next week, it's the fact that that was an absolute slugfest in the Sham Stakes, and I don't see how either horse moves forward. I wonder about American Anthem in his 3rd start coming off of that particular effort, and how much American Anthem took out of Gormley in the Sham. It was a 1/4 of a mile cutthroat duel, and horses this young, still developing with a limited amount of starts, I would have suspect in a time and space when so many trainers are skipping stepping stones and skipping particular prep races, I thought Gormley might skip this round because he ran so hard in his last race. Part of the reason I love Mastery, part of the reason I'm taking a hard stance against Gormley in the San Felipe.
So to both you and Steve, what I recognize exactly what you're saying, but it's been 2 months and a week. Do you think that takes that problem away at all? Does it mitigate that at all, or not really?
Steve?
Well, I actually have been focusing on Iliad with the stretch out, and because he's actually, you're talking about Ghost Zapper. Actually, the dam side has got plenty of punch in terms of stretching out, including the dam sire UNI, who's won a Brooklyn in addition to a Metropolitan. So I'm more focused on him. Gormley, to me, I don't know. I certainly like what he did at 2. I just don't. I don't have a feel for him, and I don't really know what to expect. I mean, I just know that he's 3rd on my list behind Mastery and Iliad. I don't.
What's your opinion?
Coming off the slop, there's a lot of things about Gormley that I appreciate Laffit taking a stand against, because if you are gonna take a position, for instance, the discussion of the horses coming out of the Remsen, and the way Gormley ran at 2, I don't like horses like this generally. I rarely see them, move forward from that point, and so I I don't want to. I certainly don't want to insult John Sheriff, but I just don't have a feel that he's, that he moves forward. And I think he is what he is.
And just to take it a step further, Steve, Millie Ball had a conversation with Victor Espinosa not too long ago, and she got the feeling, and he insinuated he thought that Royal Mo of the Sheriff's duo, and they're both very good. I mean, we're splitting hairs here, but just the same, moving forward from a 3-year-old potential Derby/Triple Crown standpoint, that it sounded like he felt Royal Mo had more upside moving forward than Gormley. He's much more imposing physically. Gormley is almost built like a sprinter. I really like Royal Mo moving forward. I don't know that we haven't already seen the best of Gormley.
Yeah, I've got that same sense.
Yeah, well, you certainly easily regress off of what is a really big effort.
It's been 2 months, Alex, but still, that was a knockdown, drag-out, cutthroat duel, an absolute slugfest, and you just wonder how, whether it's 2 months or 6 months or whatever it is, how these horses are going to respond.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with it. And certainly for value, you'd like to look elsewhere anyway. So now we'll move to what I think is the much better of the two Triple Crown preps in terms of betting value, and that's the Tampa Bay Derby. And I've got 3 contenders, and I know Laffit's got one. Steve, I hope you got something. I know you're going to have something to add. A very interesting betting race. And I'm going to start with a horse named Beasley. And this is an interesting horse for me on a number of levels, as you can see Beasley here. And again, one of the things I automatically do with my PPs, I add my scratches here. So it reminds me that here Beasley won his debut at Aqueduct. He ran second at 7 furlongs. He's stretching out in distance. He ran second here at Gulfstream at 1:16, first time 2 turns, ascending Echo-based speed figures, and then he was entered March 4th. Now, I know what race this is, but you can always look at it because these scratches actually link out. Oh, what race did the trainer scratch him out of? Well, he scratched him out of the big one last week, the Fountain Youth. I'm sorry, right? Thank you. He didn't, and it may have been a good choice. So you could see Gunnevere and stuff. I don't know whether Gunnevere ended up earning a 107 figure and winning that race, by the way. So put it in perspective, he could still have improved, but this is a much better spot for Beasley. It's his second route, so I think he's going to improve. I love the pattern improvement in his Echo-based speed figures. And no matter what other speed figures you might look at, they're probably improving as well. What's also interesting is when I look at his breeding, and I'm just double checking here, we know he's by Shackelford. We know he can get at least a mile and late. And the mare is what I was really looking about because I'd never heard of this mare. I know Quiet American, certainly the dam of Real Quiet, is a producer of distance runners. So I went and I set up a individual research for dirt routes, and this is just lifetime dirt routes. Well, this mare has only had 5 poles, but those 5 poles have run 78 times with 19 wins and a profit. So these horses are bred to go long. So I'm really enamored of Beasley as a horse that I have no doubt about. By the way, I want to point out one of the horses that was in this list is a horse I think we've all heard of named Mr. Palmer. I don't know if you guys remember him, but this was a workhorse here. You remember him? Yes?
Yep. Bill Mott.
Yeah.
Bill Mott, yeah. 21 first or second place finishes, $600,000 earned. He ran on wet dirt. He won on dirt. So this horse has some very interesting breeding for going along, and so that's why he kind of got my top choice. And the cincher for me was, and I want to hear what both of you have to say about this, was as far as Beasley, on the day he was going to run in the Fountain of Youth, instead of running him, Hennig worked in here, and he worked 46 9/10, best of 58. What's your opinion when a trainer scratches a horse that puts a big workout into him instead?
I think there was that much respect for Irish Warcry at the time, which is why they went the Tampa route as opposed to staying home, and it probably worked out for the best. The track last weekend at Gulfstream Park was like a plowed field with all the wind-aided sort of sandy surface that it became windy, cuppy. You saw where Gunnevere won from. You saw Irish Warcry stop. Whether that had something to do with the track or he just bounced remains to be seen. But I think Beasley, he's good. There's a lot of upside here. My only concern is that half the field is exiting one-turn races, and I think he's going to have a lot of company. From a race shape standpoint, he'd better run as good as he's been training, and because like I said, nobody's going to hand him anything out there.
Agreed. So the next one to point out is Taprit, and again, another horse with a nice pattern. He improved his first and second as a 2-year-old, and then he's improved his next 2 races in his speed figure. Of course, with McCracken out with a slight ankle issue, he's pointing to the bluegrass. It opens it up. So this was the second best course in the prep of Sam Davis. He's improving. This is another interesting flag. We all know how good Todd Pletcher is, but one of the things I wanted to look at was Todd Pletcher second off a 45-day layoff. And I think I have this one. I saved it again. Is that you can save as many as you want here. This is 60 to 180 days, second off that layoff. And this came out with fairly good for a trainer that gets his horses bet quite a bit. It's a 23% win rate and a -3 ROI. So Fletcher's horses, of course, logically improve second off the layoff. My price play of the race, I'm going to get this speed up so you guys can talk about horses here. My price play in the race is this one horse, Tale of Silence. And the reason I'm kind of intrigued at him is, first of all, I'm a Barkley Tag fan. And he is really doing well. If you look at this is a situational statistic. So last 6 months in dirt routes, Barkley Tag is a 7 for 25 with a 318 ROI. And the horse is improving race by race by race. Back to the Remsen, yes, it was bad. And his first start back was also pretty bad. But he didn't run that badly last fall. Kilo 2 turns. And then the sprint closed into a runaway winner here, which I kind of like. One of the interesting things here was I wanted to see if this horse was related to anybody important. And so I went and I looked at the Dams lifetime dirt routes. And look who comes up. Tale of Akati. So this is a half of Tale of Akati, the Wood winner from 2008. I believe that was the Wood back here, 5/3/2000. That was it.
Yeah.
April 5th. There it is, 2008. That was the Wood Memorial. Just to verify I'm not crazy, there it is. Came from off the pace, off a pretty lousy race, the Louisiana Derby. So kind of is good boating. And he opens 15 to 1. So I would take a look at Tale of Silence on that as well. You got a good trainer, and you've got a horse that's definitely bred to go 2 turns on the rail. So that's it. And Laffit, I know you want to talk about a horse, and Steve, you as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to zig when everybody zags. It's the ultimate contrarian play and going against the grain with giving No Dozing another chance. I know the Remsen has been beautiful, been brutal. The combination of Motown disappointing in the Arisen Starr, and Takaffel hasn't fulfilled promise. And we often label Tampa Bay Downs as a track that some horses love it, some horses hate it. So when you look at No Dozing in the Sam F. Davis, you say, well, clearly a horse who isn't at its best on this surface. I'm willing to give him another try for a few angles. You have the controls there, Ellis, and starting with the pedigree, and you can walk us through this with Union Rags as a sire here of route stakes races. Union Rags, the sire of No Dozing, and why maybe we should give him another look in here and proving that this has been another productive angle in its own right, right?
Right, well, it doesn't look that good at first glance. 7 horses, 11 starts, 1 win. But this 1 win was a horse that ran last fall because Union Rags is still a relatively new sire. And this was Dancing Rags, who won the Darley Alcibiades Keeneland 12 to 1 with a fantastic effort, and then ran disappointingly in the Breeders' Cup Tulip. So we haven't seen her come back yet. But this is a point that proves that Union Rags can get a 2-turn winner at around this trip of a young horse. And that was very intriguing to me, and it kind of turned my eyes towards what you were looking at.
Watching the development of that particular place, she didn't fire her best in the Breeders' Cup, but still, and we watched Union Rags develop, and who knows what he could have done, say, in that Kentucky Derby with a different trip, a different scenario. He was really far back. I really liked him as a racehorse, and I really think he's going to be a productive sire. And Arnaud Delacroix, there's several angles to work with him in this particular scenario as well. You've got
definitely.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I definitely agree. You could see the fixed statistic for Delacroix last year in dirt routes. I mean, that's 36% on 33. That's like 12 for 33, which is phenomenal. Second off, a 2 to 6 month layoff. He's 4 for 8. He's doing very well at stake, very well past 6 months in routes. Of course, they're a little overbet, but there's lots to like about this great young trainer.
With Delacroix, the bullet work 2 back going into a graded stakes race, the sire play, Centeno, the experience he has over every other rider in this particular race. I mean, nobody's going to mistake him with a Joel Rosario or a Javier Castellano or either of the Ortiz brothers, but I think there is something to be said for home court advantage. I just think this is too good of a prospect, too good of a colt to let get away at a big price. I think he's been completely forgotten about and dismissed, specifically because of how poor the Remsen has turned out to be and because of how bad No Dozing looked in his first try over that Tampa surface in the Sam Davis.
And as you said, in case people want to see the jockey-trainer combo, there it is there, and it's not very profitable. But if you modify it to just Tampa, I think, if I recall correctly, you go to today's track, and you can actually see the difference here. So we're going to do that. Going to go last 2 years at Tampa with Delacroix and Centeno. Okay, so it's 4 for 11, but still not profitable because they're all well bet. In this case, not going to be that well bet. This horse is going to be a decent price opening at 6 to 1, so that could skew that number up. But they do win a lot of races, 4 for 11 at Tampa in dirt routes.
I think you got a bigger number than that. I think he's a bigger number than that at post time.
Steve, you want to throw some insights in on here before we got to wrap up?
This is a bad race, and bad horses win bad races. I want
a contrarian stance. I like that.
I'm telling you, this thing has got just ugly mess written all over it, and I think there's a lot of pace in here. The horse that intrigues me, it happens to be Basha, the Gelfenstein for Gilberto Zerpa. And you're second off the layoff here. You got a horse that's based at Calder, who's working over the sandy surface there. Tampa is a deep, tiring racetrack, and he's going to be, 15, 18 to 1. Tap Writ, I suppose, probably wins. Pletcher goes cross-state and does well in this race historically, but I am not. I've got very little. I got very little juices flowing over this edition of the Tampa Bay Derby. I mean, the fact is, McCracken, if he's in this race, what is he? 4 to 5, 3 to 5,
at least.
Yeah.
So
absolutely correct.
I think. Yeah. I mean, so Tap Writ is the most likely winner. If you're fishing for a price, play with Basha.
So no
love for Beasley
or Super Savers in this year's Tampa Bay Derby.
Yeah, no, I get it. Well, I want to give one shout out to our friend John Asher at Churchill, who's a big fan of Wild Shot. I just want to mention it. I don't like him, but John likes him.
That's Rusty Arnold talking. Rusty must owe him a dinner.
Watchmaker likes him too.
Well, that's the kiss of death. That finishes him off. Rusty will hate hearing that. I want to get in also for everybody. I want to thank everybody that participated, of course. And if you missed anything, you can listen to the replay. And another terrific offer for users. We want to make sure that those of you that are just starting out, if you haven't tried it, a 1-month trial gets you 3 months worth of Stats Raceland. Terrific, tremendous deal. I mean, saving basically $150. Not to mention what you'll win by just using the program. And we say all the time what a tremendous service it is, using the angles, using the ones that Ellis and Laffit have created, the ones that you can create, the ones that also come with the service. And you basically have got the most sophisticated stable mail program ever. It'll identify horses in venues that you may never have looked at. I mean, so many opportunities out there for you if you really are serious about the work. And Stats Raceland's a tool at your disposal. And we hope you enjoyed. We'll look forward to getting together again in a few weeks.
Yeah, and by the way,
Absolute
if you
pleasure,
take
guys.
advantage of that offer, you get you all the way through Triple Crown season. So definitely the time to do it.
Outstanding. For Laffit Pincay, you can follow Laffit, of course, and Ellis on Twitter, and me, and we'll look forward to seeing Laffit this weekend at Santa Anita. Enjoy the action. I'll tell everybody you should also take a look at Oaklawn, because that's the late portion of that card. Well worth your attention. The Honeybee is going to be an important race toward the Oaks, and you've got the Sprint as well. A lot of good racing around the country this weekend, highlighted by the Big Cap card and the Tampa Bay Derby card. Appreciate everybody's attention, and of course, follow Stats Raceland. If you have any questions, Craig and the staff at Stats will answer them for you. You get the angles of the day and updates and information fed to you on Twitter. Hope you enjoyed. Look forward to talking again soon. Thanks, everybody.